Good afternoon. It's day 3 of the 27th United Nations Climate Change Conference. We're at the International Trade Center Pavilion booth here in Sharm el-Sheikh. And I am delighted to welcome the Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Welcome,
Thank
DG.
you, Vanessa.
And with us as well is my own boss, Pamela Hamilton, the Executive Director of the International Trade Center. Welcome, Pamela. Thank you. So there'll be a lot of people watching online. I wanted to start with a bit of a warm-up question so that we can give them a sense of the vibe here in Sharm el-Sheikh. Pam, what's your mood? How are you feeling?
Actually, I'm feeling very optimistic, I'm feeling hopeful, and I'm feeling energized.
Fantastic.
I think it's going to turn out much better than we anticipated, and hopefully we'll get financing, loss and damage on the agenda.
Okay, you've put the marker on the map. And DG Ngozi, how are you feeling? What are your impressions?
Well, I must say that I agree a lot with what Pamela said. When I came initially, I was feeling a bit down with lower expectations. But I must say that over the past 24 hours, I sense a mood of determination. People know this is the implementation COP, and they can't go away and leave Africa with nothing. So I do expect a little bit better. I don't want to sound too Pollyannish, but I expect to have some concrete things agreed.
Super. So, in a nod to where both of you come from, ackee and saltfish, egusi and pounded yam, these are classic pairings. Let's come to climate action and trade. Perhaps a slightly more unusual pairing. So I wanted to start by asking you, DG, why is the WTO here?
Well, that's an excellent question, Vanessa. The WTO is here because we want to sound an alarm and send a message that there's a missing piece in the nationally determined contributions and the national action plans that we are trying to implement. Each country is trying to implement for a low carbon emissions development pathway, and that missing piece is trade and trade policies. We are saying that you cannot deliver the climate plans that are being put forward unless you take trade in as an integral part. And what do we mean? We're recommending specific actions which countries can consider, that would make it so much more easy to mitigate and adapt and cope with the climate emergencies that we have.
And Pam, I ask you the same question. What's the International Trade Center doing here?
Why are we here?
Why are we here?
We're here for a similar reason, but a little more nuanced. We deal with the practical aspects of trade. If we're going to reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius, which at this point seems like a pipe dream, but we're still trying, we have to listen to who I call the silent majority. The people who are not at the table or who weren't at the table up to last year, the small businesses. They're 90% of all businesses. They're responsible for 50% of all jobs. And 80% of the emissions along the supply chain for big firms are attributable to small businesses. So if we don't have them at the table, then we have a huge missing link. And so the ITC is here to bring the voice of small business, to be an advocate for them at the table in this COP27.
Fantastic. And I think you brought some small businesses.
We brought
here
5
as well.
small businesses, Ghana, Jamaica, Egypt, I'm trying to remember, Bhutan, and I'm forgetting the 4th.
So with that being said, what message would you like to get home to the negotiators? And I'm going to start with you, DG Ngozi.
Well, I want to hold up a copy of the report that we did. Thank you. So this is the World Trade Report 2022, and it's on trade and climate change. So what I would say to the negotiators is, please look at the executive summary of this report, if nothing else, see the recommendations that we have for how trade can be helpful to help your country deliver on net zero by 2050, and in doing so, help you fight poverty, create jobs along the way. So that's what I would say to them. Don't forget trade and trade policies. Look, let me just illustrate this so to become very, very concrete. You cannot adopt new technologies, get the goods and services for mitigation and adaptation from the places where they are made to the places where they are needed without trade. You simply cannot do that. So to get new technologies in, all those things we are looking at, green tech, you need trade. That's just one illustration. And I want to say that, look, this place is we're talking finance, and finance is critical. But I also want to remind people that during the pandemic, there were many countries that had money. The COVAX facility had money, but it could not purchase vaccines for poor countries because there were export restrictions stopping the export of these vaccines. That's trade policy. So you may have all the money you have, but you may not still get what. So remember trade, put it at the center of your nationally determined contribution.
Fantastic. And Pam, what key message do you have for the negotiators?
I would say the key message for the negotiators is, to be a little hyperbolic, the house is burning. The house is burning and the kids are inside. And by the kids, I mean the small businesses. They may not be big, but they're important for the entire trading system. And if they're not looked after, what happens? And I think what is important here for the trade negotiators to understand is that small businesses need to have a voice. Are they in your nationally determined contributions? Are they part of your national action plans? Are they being consulted? Do they have a voice at your table? Because if they're not there, then what you are putting forward really does not represent the largest majority in the process of business.
Absolutely, absolutely. And any outcomes, I'm going to stay with you, Pam, any outcomes that you're hoping to see out of this process?
I think we start with the issue that overall, as the DG said, we're looking at mitigation, adaptation, and also finance. But at the end of the day, finance is not the only thing. And DG alluded to this just before. The biggest issues for small businesses is that there is finance out there. The issue they have is access to a lot of this finance. Many of the small businesses, they require 125% collateral. Who is going to find 125% collateral? That's the first thing. The second thing is they lack the capacity. They need technology, they need training, they need overall access to finance, they need to incentivize decarbonization from the policy framework by countries. So there are all these other accompanying measures that need to be included in order to ensure that the small businesses can actually utilize any finance that's actually achieved.
Thank you, Pam. And DG, what are your hopes for this meeting?
Well, my hopes, and as I said before, I'm a little more optimistic, is to see actual finance being delivered beyond the talk. We did see some example of this at the meeting of the the Global Center for Adaptation and the African Accelerated Adaptation Program, which is jointly done by the African Development Bank and the Global Center for Adaptation in Rotterdam. What are they trying to do is raise financing for adaptation for Africa. Africa is really bearing the brunt of much of this. And I heard countries announce some hundreds of millions of dollars to help with this. Norway, France, Belgium. So donors are stepping forward. So my expectation is that these announcements and more will be made real. In addition to that, I come back to trade. When all these announcements were being made, I repeated that, look, as we try to adapt, let's make sure that trade is factored into what you need as part of your adaptation. If you don't have, trade is an adaptation tool. It's a mitigation tool. So I expect and hope to see more of the nationally determined contributions take this into account, more of the national action plans take this into account as they are revised. I also expect to see more conversation about this now that this report has been launched that I talked about. So those are my expectations.
This is why I like you, DG. You know, you've come with your report, and this is the message that we're going to give across. And so the final question, sister organizations working hand in hand, what more can the WTO, the ITC do together and align to support small businesses in this low carbon transition? Let me start with you, DG.
Well, you know, one of the things I love about ITC, and Pamela knows that I say it everywhere, I'm really proud of the work that is being done there. And you know what we can do to support ITC is real. It's on the ground trying to deliver for small businesses. We are trying to see what rules can be put in place that can include small businesses, that can make them part of global value chains. We also have quite a bit of capacity building to upgrade the quality of the products, of working hand in hand with ITC, with the EIF facility, the standards facility. So a bit of practicality there, but our concern is to make sure that the rules that we make bear in mind what small businesses have to go through, that they become part of global value chains. They integrate themselves into these chains, because we know that those trading who export make more, almost twice as much as those who sell domestically.
And EDPAM.
Okay, how do I think we can work more together?
Yes.
And I think the first thing that we need to recognize is that the climate change discussion is not just a discussion about climate change. It's also a discussion about multilateralism. And it's a discussion about collaboration. That's the fourth wheel of the mitigation, adaptation, and financing, collaboration. WTO and ITC are two parts of the same coin. The policy framework is set and has to be set by the WTO at that level, because it is critical that countries come to a trading arrangement and an agreement and a place where it is safe to discuss this, and where we can understand the role of trade in climate adaptation, in mitigation, and so on. ITC, on the other hand, brings the small businesses, brings the private sector interest into the context of the negotiators. We speak to the negotiators, we try to help them understand what are the issues, what does CBAM mean? You know, simple things like this. How are negotiators going to actually speak on behalf of the small businesses if they don't know? And so it's important for us to bring that element, which is the practical element for translating what's being discussed at the WTO into what does it mean for small business and what that needs to happen to do that translation. And so for us, it's important to work with the Committee on Trade and Environment, to work with the MSME group, to work with the gender informal group. All of these are multifaceted elements of the entire process. So we work hand in hand with the WTO. We want to continue to do that. And we're very excited about moving forward on future collaboration.
Fantastic. It's been short, it's been sharp. I think the DG and the ED have put the action into trade for climate action. Thank you very much for your attention, and keep on following us at the WTO at COP27 on the WTO website, ITC at COP27 on the ITC website. Lots of fantastic activities happening here, and we look forward to more of these conversations over the coming few days. Thank you.
Thank you.